pull up the Wi-Fi on this. And look for. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to my studio sessions here with Beatport. Oh, phone is ringing. Hello? Okay, not for you. You got the internet connected? Hey, what's going on, everyone over in Beatport, Twitchland? I'm Roger Sanchez. Welcome to my studio sessions. We're coming at you from my home studio since my actual production studio is still under construction. So I'm just working out of my little home spot. And as you can see, I like to work with Ableton and Logic. By the way, I got a separate computer. No, you got to put up, look up.
There's no Wi-Fi.
There should be Wi-Fi. There should be Wi-Fi on this. Maybe we had it the other day. Sorry, guys. So it's a slight little tech issue. And if not, you want to pull it up on the other one. So as you can see, I like to work with Ableton and Logic rewired together. Those are my two main DAWs that I like to do all my productions with. And the reason I do it this way is I'm used to doing my vocal recording. And as you can see, I've got a couple of vocals up here because today we're going to work on the production, basically a remix of a track that I'm producing that I've had vocals for as I'm working on my new artist album. And I like using Logic predominantly for creating my bass lines, recording my vocals. I like using Ableton Live for my beats, chopping things up very, very quickly, auditioning effects. I have just recently gotten the Ableton push, so I'm not super versed on it, so I'm gonna start working with that a lot more regularly. My boy Mike over here has been one of the ones who introduced me to push. But I tend to work with Ableton using chopping up my beats and my samples. I've got a pretty extensive sample library. So if you can see, I've got a ton of different samples. I've got my Apple loops here. I did a sample pack for Loop Masters. And so I've got a couple of different sample packs there. And I tend to use a lot of drums more in the, sorry about that. I tend to use my Ableton for more my drum loops and my beats. And then I'll sometimes drag in bassline samples, chop them up and layer them out, and then export them into Logic, where I will then use all the compression, all the, start using different effects to get the type of vibe that I want to do. So to kind of start things off, here's a vocal that I got. Let me just mute this channel right here, just so you can see.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this.
So I've got some vocal delays in the background. I've got, that's a vocal that I started working on with Danny Howard quite some time ago as a collaboration. So I've stripped back the track. Now I found a sample from the Sam Ball track, which I was just put in as a loop in the background, just kind of to get the vibe of it.
We've been down this road before.
And sometimes I like to take just a loop, put it in, layering it as just a placeholder. With this, what I do like is, by the way, I'm kind of listening on headphones, so there's a delay on my voice, which throws me off. So I'm going to be listening to like on one ear sometimes. Here, what I like is the tom. So I'm going to loop this section. What I like about this is that you could chop very, very quickly in Ableton and just start And when I tend to use samples like that, first as a placeholder, I'll just drop them in just to kind of get a feel. But what I really like is the element of the beat there, that little tom. I'll go in and just kind of take out those little extra. Now, Logic tends to be my main, has been my main DAW for quite some times, quite a few years. And I started working with Ableton as a way to speed up my beat chopping process and organize my loops and my drum patterns a lot faster. So if I was doing this in Logic, just the way it works, it takes a bit longer. But here, what's good is I've got a bunch of samples here on the some of my SP1200 ones, my favorite. Got a nice little heavy kick. So what I want to do is just kind of do a real quick beat. One thing about working with Ableton Rewired through Logic is that you're not able to use any of the filters or any of the plugins on Ableton while it's rewired. So I'm just gonna do a quick little arrangement for the kick, just real straight. I'm gonna just hop through it very, very quickly. And I just like that. And one thing I do like about Ableton is that you could do a lot of little reverse things very, very quickly. Just kind of play around with it. So I'm going to use that as the basis of the basic for this track to lay down as a vibe for the groove. A little bit of an Afro vibe there.
We've been down this road before.
Now go, all right. I'm kind of not crazy about that second.
We've been down. We've been down. We've been down.
Yeah, it's okay.
We've been down.
I'll just experiment real quickly with this.
We've been down.
Yeah, so like that. So what I'm doing here with this is when I get a chop that I like, I immediately merge it, dump it so that it just forms a quick block, and this way I can just start moving quickly, laying out my beats. All right, let's see. Oh, sorry, put that on the MIDI channel. I'm gonna put the MIDI channel up there. I set up a MIDI channel with the drum rack to use the Ableton push, but I'm still working on it, so I think I'm just gonna do kind of a bit of drag and drop.
We've been down this road before. We've been down.
And as you can see, it's just real quick, simple beat building just to kind of get the start of the vibe for the track. Then I'm going to start layering some more layers on top real quickly. And basically what I'm doing is just getting the groove going early on so that I can use that as the basis to get the vibe going for the track. Then then I'll start adding loops over it. There's a little bit of a delay that I'm experiencing using everything going through Ableton and Logic and running it through OBS so you guys can see it. So you'll excuse me if I take a little bit longer, plus the delay on my vocals throwing me off a little bit. I figure I'll get it used to it. Ooh, did we put the pre-delay on this thing? Give me 1 second, guys. I think that's what we didn't do this time. Yes, we did. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. So I'm just going to lay out real quickly. Now, one thing is, since these are quick blocks, this helps me keep the time a lot tighter and figure out where to layer out the hats, because it's got a longer tail. So that way when I copy them, sometimes I'll just throw this little tail bit in the beginning just to make it a quick section for chopping it really fast. But the reason I emphasize speed is I don't want to spend too much time just laying out the basics. I want to start getting into the fun parts, like chopping up beats and making them work with it. And by the way, guys, put up your questions if you have any questions for me, and they'll let me see them right over here.
Johan said put up the master volume.
Put up the master volume. Okay, you guys are having a little bit of low volume. Let's see. Here we go.
We've been down this
There we go.
road before. I thought that we were past it.
So that TV's Mo asked me, is there a reason why I consolidate the clip already? Since I'm doing these in the 8-bar blocks, if I consolidate it in an 8-bar block right away, it just saves me time in terms of copying it and laying it out quickly. Later on, I can go back and deconstruct it and re-chop it. A little bit more on the volume. Okay. Later on, I can always cut up the consolidated one, but this way, when I lay it out in different blocks, I could do it real quickly. So now, for instance, I'm going to go back in because I'm listening to the reverse loop in there.
On this road before.
So over here, I'm just doing this little practice 8-bar loop just to kind of get the vibe going.
We've been down this road before. On this road,
So what I'm noticing is I kind of want this little reverse thing to go a little bit less longer.
we've been down. We've been down. We've been down this road before. We've been down.
Okay, so now I just cut that length down. Let me know if the volume is good. Let me know if the volume is good for you guys. I'm just trying to make sure I get the volume on my microphone and the track that I'm working on right. So yeah, I'm consolidating these early just to get the blocks tight. Now I'm gonna already start going into some of my little loops. So right, I didn't want that extra little rattling bit, but I like that little conga in it. This is 122 BPM, so not super fast, but a cool little vibe there.
A little more mic.
A little more mic? Okay, let's see. How's that volume for the mic, guys? Is that good? Just tightening this up, making sure you guys could hear this properly. All right. So as I was saying, as I'm building the beats for this, just to kind of give me a simple groove to work with, I try to do it as quickly as I can to just build the basics. Okay, Lasanta, how do I work with a vocalist singer? Do I work on a project first by myself or together? It depends. Sometimes I'll work with a singer that sends me vocals. So they might have a song that they've got some ideas for, they laid it down already, and they send it to me, and I treat it almost like a remix. But a lot of times I'll work on an idea, an original track, and then send it to a writer or a vocalist, and I have them write to it. Or if I have the proximity, we can get together and write in the studio as well together. Because I do also like to write lyrics and melodies in addition to the tracks. So the good thing is that I try to make sure that I have different ways of approaching these things. So it's not just one way. Let's see here.
We've been down this road before.
So now I'm hearing it. I'm not like in the reverse every single time, but
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past it.
right now I'm predominantly living in the world of Ableton because the first thing I tend to focus on is building my beats. All right, so let's get back to one of the interesting things is when I started working with Ableton, I never really got the mastery of Ableton as much as some people who just work exclusively in Ableton. But I got it just enough so that I could work in it and try to accelerate my beats and work what I'm doing with my vibe to add that to Logic. All right. And let's see what I did with my there we go. Some percussions in there, some layered. Yeah, I did this the sample pack for Loop Master, so I'm using a lot of the beats that I have on there just to really quickly get this vibe. Now, one thing that I'll say is the less time you spend in the beginning just to get your basics going, to get the groove going, the faster the production vibe of getting into the bass lines and the chords and everything will go. But what I will say is it also is important to make sure the sound of what you want is right. So here I'm going, okay, you know what? That up and high may be a little bit long for me. Yeah, I kind of like that. So right now, I've just got mostly the vocal going in Logic. I put a basic, I really haven't put any real effects on it, but I tell you what, just to kind of throw something on it in the meantime, I like to use this Waves plugin for vocals, just because it has some really cool kind of settings for it real quickly to just get a good quick sound. missed that. I missed that question. Could you bring it up again, please?
We've been down this road before.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite chorusing effects on the Waves one. Okay, why not start off just in Ableton instead of Rewire? Okay, sometimes if I'm working on an original track, I'll start off just in Ableton to get quick beats. But since I'm in essence using a remix, almost remixing the vocal, I'm working with a vocal that's already recorded. I need Logic to drop the vocal in, mainly because that's the world where I'm going to finally finish all my mixing and production, and I really do more sound design in there. But this way, I'll just get the groove very, very quickly in Ableton, and then be able to switch to playing bass lines, keys, chords, and finding different things in Logic. If I start off a project in Ableton, sometimes I'll get to a very advanced place, and then I'll export the tracks, open it up in Logic, and then start doing the sound designing on it. So right now what I'm doing is I'm matching the beats, and I had to tune, for instance, the first loop, the sandball loop, to the vocal to make sure that I'm getting everything in pitch. And for me, it's kind of the best of both worlds. I find that vocals sound a bit different on Ableton than Logic, and it could be a cool sound if it's just a sample track, but if I'm going to focus on doing the remix with a full vocal, I'd like to get the best I can out of it. And the other thing is, I know Logic a lot better than I do Ableton in terms of where to pull up my workflow for vocals, for processing. So it's a lot quicker, and I have everything laid out a bit differently in Logic than in Ableton. All right, so here, let's see.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this. We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this.
Sounds to me like some drifting later on. Let me just, on the clap. So let me just bring that in, see if that changes it. I kind of want something that'll bring a little bit more of a jackin' vibe underneath this tribal groove that I'm doing for this track. See, I like the rattling hats in the background, so let me see.
We've been down this road before. We we've been down this road.
That just taking that little first section makes it a little bit cleaner and gives me the kind of like rattling, jacking hats in the background. My Ableton tends to get real colorful with all these tracks. I kind of like it. It's when I start organizing all of my beats. By the way, if you probably noticed, so far I like to put my hats underneath my kicks normally. So I'll arrange it like this: put all the hats there, put the claps there, and then I'll start putting the other loopier stuff under it. So that's the more percussive stuff tends to go after. It's just the way I like to organize all of my beats so that I find them.
We've been down this road before.
Where'd my hat go? All right, so this guy I would put up here.
We
Okay. The hat I'll
I might have. We've been. We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this.
All right, so what I tend to do here, let me take off my headphones, this thing drives me crazy with the talking. What I'll do here very quickly, I like this loop. I think this is a solid basis and I can add things to it later. I'll just start exporting these. Well, there's one or two ways. The longer way, which I'll do it just for my own safety, is I'll just start soloing these, exporting this from here. And by the way, let me show you how I rewire the two. I take an auxiliary channel and then I just literally here where you have your inputs, I'll take Ableton Live, rewire just the left and the right. Now you could add as many auxiliaries as you like and then start putting like 16 tracks if you like out of Ableton, but I just find that working with the left and the right is quick enough for me. And then I'll just solo this and then quickly do a bounce offline. I'll make it in wave, 24-bit. The first one I'm gonna do is, let me go here into my audio files. I'll just put kick. And I'll start going down the line and soloing each track. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong one. Trying to move quickly here. Let me do that one more time. I'll bounce the kick. Yes, replace. Start going down the line. The reason I'm doing this early on is because then I want to take these beats, layer them in Logic. Let's call this a shaker. Quick abbreviated names for some of these. But it just, one of the things I found in terms of production is is that it's just, as long as you make your titles of your tracks something that that's very memorable to you, so you can identify it, it'll help you layer things in such a way that they'll come together a lot better in the flow and a lot quicker in the flow for you. Okay. And I think now I've got the basis of enough of a beat that I can then import that as an 8-bar section into Logic. Hi, Tom. Oops. Hi, Tom. That I can then lay out a rough arrangement in Logic, and then I'll show you what I do afterwards. I just mute everything in Ableton, let it run in the background while I'm still able to add different things to it later on. Conga. Conga 1. I'll put like Conga 1 if I might layer a second Conga on it later on, depending on how I like to play off the syncopation. All right, so for now, I'll take these and I'll just mute these tracks. And I flatten these tracks as I've already bounced them in so that I'll know which ones not to use. And also make sure I turn them off so that they're not playing on top of it. Go in here, take this off solo. wait. Hide all regions. Audio file, add audio file. And we go to as you can see, I like to organize all of my projects according to what they are. Can you put up that question again? Because I was so focused over here, I missed that one. Audio files, I'll just add all these in. Please elaborate on why vocals sound different in Ableton. Ableton has a sound to it that tends to be a bit grimy, and that's really cool when you want that grimier sound. It's kind of hard to articulate, but what I've noticed is when I've worked with vocals in Ableton, especially if you're time stretching vocals, there's just a certain grit that comes to it, which if it's a more sample based track and you want that grit kind of sound to it, it's cool. But if you want to get the cleanest vocal, especially if I'm working on like a proper big vocal remix or a production and I want to have the best quality vocal, plus process it in a certain way, I know how to do that better in Logic as opposed to do it in Ableton. And the one thing I will say is, regardless of which DAW you work with, the idea is to get the best performance for yourself out of it. So it's not that Ableton's better, it's not that Logic is better, it's not that any other one of them is better. These are the ones that work best for me. And with each of these, what I try to do is take the best from Ableton that I've found, which is the speed of how I get to audition sounds, drag in loops, chop and flip and reverse and lay them out, and then I can export them as files. And then once I have them here, I'll bring them into Logic. Let me just do this, hide all regions, and then I'll start stacking my beats in. Since this is this nice little 8-bar thing, let me put my beat there, put this as the kick. That'll just name it immediately. Clap. Open hi-hat. My shaker loop. I start layering the, let's see, ooh yeah, I got the clap in there, got the shaker loop. I'm gonna put the high tom over it, then the tom loop wave. And then I'll put the conga. So here now, this is where I take a quick little bit of time to get a sound of.
We've been down this road before.
So I just solo the kick. Nice little dirty kick. Actually, instead of doing that, I'm going to go for the compressor. Now, what I found is the opto toms compressor just really gives you a big saturation and distortion almost, and I kind of like that with this particular kit sound. Hitting it hard in the red, but later on I'll balance all the levels. One thing I will say is when I'm working with just throwing down ideas very, very quickly, I just try to make sure that unless it's something that I want to achieve as a distorted effect, I'm not too concerned about the exact level, because I know I can balance that later on in the mix, but I'll try to get rough and almost mix along the way just to get a vibe of what the outcome sound is going to be, but I worry about cleaning it up later on. So when I get a little, I'll just put a basic, round it out.
Music's a little bit too loud.
Say again?
He said the music's a little too loud.
Okay, the music's a little too loud now? Okay. All right, guys, we'll get the balance of the volume right. Now, what I haven't done yet, because I just really pulled this up and I wanted to show this to you guys, is when I start setting up my effects channel. So I I tend to like to use Rob Papin for reverbs. So I'm going to set up my verb channel, and I'll use, let's see, I want to use a very kind of a small room. So for my claps, so let's see, that's a hip snare. So that'll be the first one that I use over here. I send that to bus 1. Let's see, I'll keep that right there. This nice little short reverb there. And then I'll pull up another RP verb. It's this one and Sony's are two of my favorite verbs. This is one that I always use, the vocal acapella. It's a much more of a longer verb, but I use it on most of my acapellas, on most of my vocals. But it can also work for a clap, for a, that's a little bit of a room. And then sometimes I'll use another favorite verbs, Oxford. Reverb, where are you? Yeah, by the way, I'm working out on my laptop, and it's very powerful, but when it's running OBS and Logic and Ableton, it gets a little bit longer. You only use virtual instruments, or do I have some instruments for that? Well, right now, today, I'm using virtual instrument for this session. So what's been happening over the past few years is that I have been touring so much that I found that it was difficult for me to get productions done in between my tour schedule. So I basically would bring my laptop, and I had to work with as much virtual synth and samples that I had in my drives that I could take with me. What it meant was that I was able to become more productive while I was on the road, and be able to complete projects so that I had my musical output, because I'm not always able to be in my studio. Like right now, as I'm working on my main studio room, I don't have the hardware pieces that I'm going to have. Like I've got I still have an old SP200, which I like to bring up just for the gritty sound of it. I'll have the Roland Aria system set up, and there's some other outboard synths that I'm going to be digging out. I still have my old Juno 106, but I do work a lot in the virtual world, and there's a lot of amazing VST synths that really, really sound good, and the processing has been really great. Now, I do have things like the Manley Massive Passive, Tube Tech EQs, all these outboard, more EQ and compression, which I think adds just a different sound. That's what I tend to, finish the mixes with, or record the vocals when I'm in the recording studio. But if I'm trying to get a lot of work done and I'm, on a plane or in a hotel room somewhere around the world, then, or I don't have my studio up and I'm able to work in this little bedroom that I have here in my apartment, I set it up so that I can keep it as concise as possible, but get as much work done as I can. All right, so here we have the Oxford reverb. I put that on bus number 3. Let me see which one. Let's see. Yeah. I like really short verbs on claps, except for when I do big reverb throws. Now, the big reverb throws, and if you notice, I'm doing all the reverbs first. I like using the Quick Quack Fusion Field. Now with this one, as you can see, I put the decay a lot longer. I put the low cut in, the tap right to the start, make it super wet.
He put his questions in purple in there.
Okay, let's see. Roger, how about techniques to make the perfect kick drum in the sense of certain good plugins, or what effects to apply? All right. Okay, Lasanta is also asking what sound card am I using. Well, right now I'm using the Apogee Duet, which is my favorite sound card to use. I used to have, and I still have it, the Symphony from Apogee, but there's a newer model. Well, the reason I've been working with Duet is because I'm able to take that on the road with me, and my studio is, for all intents and purposes, a mobile studio, so I can literally do productions anywhere in the world without necessarily falling behind on trying to get as much work done. But the other one that I have, which I love, and you put this on, is this puppy, UAD, the Apollo Twin. Now this is amazing for vocals, and UAD has a sick array of plugins. I didn't set that up with this one today just because I had everything set up with the Duet, but I was given the Apollo last AVE for a session that I did with UAD and Fader Pro on a production course, and I have to say I do love working with the Apollo. And for me, it's always been about, like I said, what is it that will work best for you? So that's going to be more of a live in the studio one, because the Duet tends to be something that I can take with me anywhere. It's also got the breakout box, which has 2 microphone and 2 output cables. So if I walk into another studio, I could just put it down, drop it in with my laptop, and all I need is a MIDI keyboard. And I'll tell you what else, I tend to travel with this. Let me put this in here. This is what I tend to travel with. So when I'm on the road, I'm using the Sakai LPK25. This is like my little MIDI keyboard, and if you've ever seen me on the plane, a lot of times you catch me in there doing this, and I always get all like the stewards and the stewardesses asking me, so what are you doing? And I'm just like, I'm just working on a production or a mix. But what it does is it keeps me mobile, but still productive. So I think for sound cards, it's going to be between the Duet and it's going to be between the Apollo. But the one thing I'll give the Apollo is that UAD has some amazing plugins, and they'll only work with UAD hardware. So kudos to that one. Now, let me see. What are your daily driver speakers pre-production? I'm trying to understand what that one is. Happy Leptic said, what are your daily driver speakers? I guess you're asking me what are my daily speakers? I have in my studio, and if you see in the photograph that we posted up, these are custom speakers done by Richard Alderson. He's got a company called Alderson Acoustics. So when the next time I do one of these, when my room is finished, my near field monitors and my 6-foot tall speakers are all Alderson Acoustics, and he makes, for me, some of the most transparent speakers that sound amazing. And I'm all about just getting the most realistic reproduction I possibly can. So let me just do this real quick and add this verb, Fusion Field. And what I like adding Fusion Field for is, if you want to have this type of longer so when I'll do those reverb throws on some drums or even vocals, I find that adds a nice, really dope dynamic effect, especially if you want to do a dropout, like a breakdown, and you want to put something to transition between the main section and a breakdown. One of those big long verb claps is the ones that I like, and Fusion Field is the one that I've been using. What I like to do now, then I'm going to set up my delays. So I love using this dub station, which is basically the, let me see, where is it? This, I like putting the low cut on this, high saturation. This is what I call it, kind of like doing a more reggae type of delay. Let's see. I love using those for delay throws. So this is just kind of me setting up a basic bus rack for delays. And then I'll just have my stereo delay. I use as a quarter note for the vocals are really good, but I'll use that. Let's see. That's also quarter note triplet. And I use those mainly for vocals and sometimes as a main bit. So here we go. I'm just gonna quickly run through getting my sound for my beat.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this.
I tend to put compression on most of my channels for my drums. But there's another thing that I like to do besides that. So let's see, I'm going to do the Etiquette. That gives it a bit of a longer one, but I think I'm going to try. Again? Plugins aren't showing up? Okay. Can we see the plugin windows, see what you're doing? Why are the plugins not showing up? Okay.
And show Logic. That's weird.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys aren't seeing the. I thought I was getting the full window capture on Logic. Hold on a second, let me see. No, it's not showing up. Okay, why is it not showing up? I've got my Ableton, I've got my Logic. What other window capture would it be for?
Go in OBS.
Bear with me, guys. Let me add another window to see if I can add on something.
Add a plus. Go to window capture.
Window capture? Okay.
And then add create a new.
I'm just gonna effects capture.
And then window. Go to. All right. It's gonna be Logic, or actually, unclick that.
And click what?
And then click show windows with empty names.
Show windows with empty names. Okay.
And then go back to the menu. Logic. It's gonna be one of those. So click Logic.
First one?
Or the second one.
No, it's nothing.
Go to
That's
that
not
second
it.
one because it may still be that same. It may be the one sort
It
of.
said effects capture. Oh yeah, that's what I call it. Yeah.
Change it to the other one.
Hold on a second. Let me put this over here. Let's see if it's this one. Here we go. Okay, guys. All right. So sorry about that. Let me resize this. Let me find a place to put this. I'm gonna have to put this here.
I'm sure you have to change it with every plugin. I haven't done this yet.
Okay. So we'll see if this keeps if we can see this. I know we got the little logo thing here. So let me just move my little logo from here. I'll see if I can shrink that down a little bit and just move it over. There we go. So right now what I'm doing here is I've got the drum mix. Now let me see if this will allow me to, I like that. And let's see, if I do this, there's another thing that I like doing in Dynamics, which is the enveloper. And let's see. No, it's not bringing up the enveloper. Right.
So every time you open a plugin, you gotta change the window.
Oh. All right, guys. Yeah. Looks like every time I open up a plugin, I'm gonna have to add another, change the window. So maybe it's gonna be a little bit cumbersome, but I'll see what I can do. I'm wondering if there's any way. This will be the middle one. Okay. All right. So this is right now what you're looking at here is the enveloper, and I like to room killer. That just starts making it shorter. So you have the full one, and it just tightens up everything. So let me do this over here. What am I looking at here? Audio input capture. Audio capture. And I guess this is FX capture. I'll put it there. All right, so.
I thought that we
compression. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up, this is one of really, where the, is it not coming up now? I'm trying to do the effects capture, guys. Hold on. I have to do it every time. Okay. One thing that I really like about this is I can change. Let me just change the compression on this a little bit. Say again? Okay. I'll probably drop the music. Sorry, the music is a bit loud and my microphones have dropped a bit low. What I'm doing here with the room killer is I'm changing that end part of that loop. So you're hearing more of like the cowbell. So now I've got one other thing that I like to use. Instead of using an actual sidechain compressor, and this one I'm gonna show you in a second when I change this one up, more microphone. I don't think I can put it any more microphone. Let me see. Let's see. All right, let me put a compressor on my microphone. Guys, give me 1 second. I am going to adjust my microphone level because it looks like, but what'd I do, bro? Filters? Okay. Okay. Got it. What's the threshold? Which one? Right. Right. Got it. Right there?
No, not 12, 2.
2. Got it. Just getting some of the settings right so you guys can hear me. All right, I'm gonna change the effects capture window to so you can see what I'm doing here. I like using this LFO tool, and what it does, right? So I've killed a little bit of the end of that loop. So now basically I've got this sidechain compression that then changes. So I can literally just trim that out. All right, I like the way that feels. Okay, so then.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past it.
I'm gonna bring up that envelope. Sorry, the.
We've been down this road before.
Do you do any gain staging? Do you have anything on the master? Limited while working. I'm not really working with too much on the master in the beginning because basically I'm not working with too much on the master. I'm literally leaving the master untouched. The only thing I'll do is I'll back it down if I start getting distortion. And as I said, I tend to work out the final sound after I've laid in the basic programming of the production. Right now I'm taking a little bit extra time. I'm not getting super deep into it, but I want to give you guys an idea of how I'm creating my loops. That's why I told you guys I started off with Ableton. Now, as I've pulled it into Logic, I'm starting to use different effects and compressors, and instead of using and then basically putting the sidechain LFO plugin to just get the vibe going of the sound of what I want the drum loop to be like. So I'll wait till later on to really put something on the master. And as you can see, I kind of solo these individually. So with this one, I'm going to want to, and let me see if you're not gonna, just to move quickly through this. Okay, so that's, looks like I'm gonna have to do this with FX Capture each time. If you can see that, okay. So one thing I do, these are built-in Logic plugins. and they have really cool plugins for certain types of percussion. So I use that for the toms, but I want to take that kick out a bit. I just like the mid on that. So I'm going to use, let's see, Sonoxys, create a filter. No, that's not it. Here we go. I like this Sonoxys filter. It's just really quick to use, so take a lot of the bottom end out of that. But I like that mid tom. And then real quickly, the EQ that comes with Logic is pretty good. So now I start setting up the bus to put a little bit of an effect on it. I set up all my buses. And so what I'm doing is, and I'm starting to find where I want to lay these sounds in. So I might pan left and right with some of these. Again, the same thing with these. I'm going to compress them very, very quickly. Use one of my favorite ones. Like I said, if anything with a tom in it, I'm just using that toms. Then I'll use the Sonoxys creative filter. Which is this one. Strong bass line taking down other sounds of frequencies. Well, you know, one thing about strong bass lines that I find is I wind up working a bit backwards. So right now I'm laying out the beat so I can groove with it. When I pull up a bass line sound, sometimes I'll strip out all the other sounds first, but leave the kick in. And the idea is to get the EQ of the frequencies between the kick and the bass line so you can hear the bass line. Some bass lines are a lot subbier, so it's going to have a different frequency effect on the overall drums. And then I'll start adding on the different elements and rebalancing them according to how they work with the actual bass line. But the bass and the kick really have to work together the best in terms of making sure those frequencies don't cancel each other out. So right now, like I said, I'm just kind of laying down these basic groove. Somebody's got an effect on them they shouldn't have. Where's the delay?
We've been down this road before. I thought
So I have one more conga loop to add in there. Okay, and again, I will always start off with the compressor. Make sure you can see this. Let's see. I think I'm gonna go with the optotoms. That's gonna give me that knock on the top of that. Just gonna. So when I'm noticing there's a little bit of a clip at the end of that little loop that I want to try to diminish a bit. So I'm going to put the enveloper on. Do the room killer again. Do you ever sidechain the shakers, etc. on the kick to create that bouncy vibe? Well, as I said before, what I like to do is I use this LFO tool to get that sidechain effect. I just use that on the shaker loop. So this LFO tool gives me the sidechain on it. That's giving me that bouncy effect. As opposed to putting it through a compressor, then putting a kick to trigger the sound, the loops. The good thing about this is that there are a lot of different programs and different types of sidechain variations and structures to change can change the sound dramatically. And I'll show that with like a bass line actually in a minute. So let me put some reverb on this conga. Oh, did I skip 4? Skipping 4. I learned to count. A little reverb on it. Oop, I'm on the wrong place. Oops, sorry. So here we go. Let me set that up again. 2, 3. Can you guys hear me better now? I think. Ask Johan if they can hear me properly now. I think I sound a lot clearer now. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Oh, I know what it is. I'm hearing the echo. I'm hearing the echo inside my headphones because of the way this is coming back. Okay, so I have a basic loop, drum loop here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay these out quickly. I can mess with the arrangement later on. Instead of just copy clicking, what I noticed from my own little bit of organization, I like to copy these and see where they are rather than just hit random click copy. So I'll just drop these in really quickly. Oops, sorry, moved it. And I'm saving all the time. By the way, that's another thing. I'm always just Apple S, save everything at all points in time. And for those of you who don't really use Ableton too much, collect all and save. What I tend to do with all of my projects in terms of organization is I'll organize everything into a folder so that my Logic and my Ableton, all the synths and samples go into one folder. And then I'll back that folder up to my hard drive to make sure that it's copied and there are gonna be no issues later on trying to find it. Because the worst thing is if you have your sounds and samples scattered and let's say you have it on one drive and for whatever reason that drive isn't connected or you didn't bring it that day or I'm on the road and I brought my laptop and I left something here, then the sounds won't appear. But if you collect it all and save, that's one thing I really like about Ableton, then all the synths and all the sounds that you've been using are collected in that folder. And I tend to, like I said, shift everything over really quickly to audio. So here I'm working on this loop section as the main hook of the vocal.
We've been down this road before. The we were past this.
So now I want to find some bass line sounds. Sub boom bass is one of my favorite. Are you compressing, side chaining every part of this beat to another part of the beat? So I'm not compressing and side chaining everything yet. What I do is I tend to take a specific section and put the LFO tool on it so I can change the side chain and maybe make it do something different. I'll give you an example. So before I get onto the bass line, can we actually, you know, they can't see the sub boom bass come pop up. Okay, I see how that's gonna work now. All right, so let's go back to here. I'm just gonna show you. It's the shaker loop has the LFO tool on it, right? Let me go to FX capture. So that's what it's doing there. So now what I started doing first was completely changes the sound of what you have going on. So if I want to do like something with an opening filter, much love, brother. So those are just different filters. That's one thing I love about this LFO tool. And you could literally put this on every channel and have a completely different side chain for every channel. Then later on, if you want to take all your drums, group them into one subgroup out, group all your drums in, then you could put another side chain on top of that to then make the entire thing bounce. But as you can see, if I'm coming up with different side chains for this, okay. All right, so there's a little clip at the end of that, right? That just makes it more of a... So, Mr. Marmezzo, is every part of my beat an audio sample? Since I've been doing a lot of work on the road, most of my drum sounds are either samples or they're part of drum kit samples. I also have a lot of live drums that I've had guys like Derek McKenzie, who's the drummer from Jamiroquai. So he's played a lot of drums for me. He's given them to me. I'll sample and chop them up. Even if it's a complete live drum, I'll chop it up and lay it out so it's tight to the beat. And then I'll rearrange the drum sound. So I like to take beats and sometimes take the air space in between just for like a vibe, or I'll reverse a section of it like I did with the tom earlier on just to get a different sound for it. So now
We've been down this road.
we just have that tribal vibe going on over there. Okay, let me see. And so here, I'm gonna see if I can get this FX capture here. What would it be for this then if I'm trying to bring up the sub boom bass? How do I bring that up over here, Mike? Because I don't know if it's coming up as Logic Pro.
Ooh, is that thing still tipped? Show window without names. It does.
Oh, show window.
Yeah, no, we want that on.
Want that, right?
Wait, so
There it goes. Okay, so this is one of my favorite bassline modules to use. It is the sub boom bass, and as you can see, it's got graffiti on it, so you know that's near and dear to my heart. Just taking a quick question. Let's see. Okay, well, any questions? Move forward. So this is a sub boom bass. I love this. Let me see if this lets you. So every single window, by the way, Mike, I've got to do another.
Yeah.
So I want to show the presets. All right, guys, what I'm noticing is that if I want to start showing like even the individual patches and so on and so forth, I got to keep opening up windows in OBS.
There's a way to change it, but it's the one that we did when you get like the 100 desktops.
Right.
So you do a display capture.
Got it. Yeah, so guys, I'm going to try to keep it a little more basic in terms of showing you things. I won't show you the actual sound, but you see the synth. Sub boom bass is one of my favorite ones. So let's see, I'm just going to start going through some sounds. Actually, so let's see, Dirty Flavor Bank. Okay, somebody, Marmez was saying, so well, you're basically patching the EQ filter to the patch duration of the envelope as a travel over each part of the beat, and that is practically terming as the LFO. In this case, the LFO is just open-ended kind of term. The actual effect is called LFO tool. I forget which is the company that actually does that one, but it's called an LFO. That's the name of the actual plugin. It's called LFO tool. And that is the one that has all those different programs that are entered. And you basically put it in as a patch, and it's filtering everything that goes through it. So you can then. This is why I like using those on the individual channels, so that I can change literally the dynamic of the beat of the loop. So that even though I start out with one specific loop, I can alter it, and that will then later on I can actually bounce the stem down the road as that, and it'll be that for the engineers, because I usually have my engineers mixing everything down for the final mix down. I always send them the final stem with the whatever effect or compression that I've put on it. With the exception of the vocals, I tend to leave the vocals alone because my engineers are really, really good at mixing vocals properly. So I'll just mix vocals for a vibe, and then I'll always do a rough bounce to send my engineer a vibe of what it is that I was listening to, especially if I'm on a plane or in a hotel room and I'm listening to things on my headphones. They don't necessarily sound the way they will in the final mix, but at least if I've done an EQ or I've done a rough mix, I can give it to my engineer to then tweak it. And again, this is mostly because I've been doing a lot of production on the road, and here in my home studio, it's not EQ'd room, so I don't really trust the room in terms of what I'm hearing, but it gives me enough vibe that I could work with. So between working with headphones and in speaker environments that aren't necessarily properly tuned rooms, I can give myself a vibe of what it is that I want to hear. So right now, I'm just searching for bassline sounds. By the way, this tends to be one of the what I like to call the love-hate relationship that I have with looking for sounds and bass lines or synths or whatever. I literally will spend one day of production, not lay a single note down, but just go through and organize my favorite synths. Okay, so to that end, I'm gonna take a quick pause for a second. Here is something that I've done to really help me out when I want to go and find my favorite synths. I have set up a series of favorite synths. Let me see, can they see that over there? Let me see if you guys can see that. I think you can. Can I see that? Let's see. Let me see if I can see that in OBS. Sorry guys, I'm gonna move a few things around over here because I have this all on one window. I'm trying to see if you guys can see. No, you cannot. All right, so let me mute this for 1 second. I will see if they can see. How will they be able to see that? I want to show you guys what I'm doing Okay, wait a second. Let's double click that. I have to put it up as an instrument. How can I show them this? Let me see, that comes up here. No, not there. Yeah. All right. So the thing is, I'm trying to see if there is a way for me to show you. No, there isn't. In my instrument tab, I have created in Logic a series of, and you know what the best way I'm going to do is I'm going to take this for 1 second, my camera, and just turn it around so you can see this for 1 second. It's probably the best way that I could do it and just show it to you. So if you see this, just quickly, I have set up my favorite synths, my processing phase, my synth phase, this like Melodyne, so on and so forth, my favorite delays, my pitches, favorite reverbs. And what that does for me, so I'm going to put this back here. Yeah, let me get that. So, yeah, rather than trying to take the longer boy away, what this does for me is it allows me to, where did I put the bass line, sub-boom bass? Did I get it? It allows me to literally list all of my favorite synths and just kind of go to them quickly, because I have a lot of VST plugins. I have a lot of synths, a lot of, let me just get my camera centered again. A lot of plugins, and let me go back to my phase. Where are we? Oh, right here. Yes, sub-boom bass. Let me bring the sub-boom bass back up so you can see it. Okay, back to the sub-boom bass. My favorite bass modules. It allows me to really quickly go find all my synths that I really love. So I'll literally that's one thing I've discovered with the push is that it lets me audition these things a lot quicker. I'm just going through some sounds, bass presets here. Let me see. Where are we? Bass presets 2. So I just want to find something really quickly that I can work with that kind of gets me closer to the round sound that I'm hearing in my head as a timpani stack. The one thing I will say is with so many synths, it really is useful if you just kind of lay them out where you can find them quickly. My problem is I tend to forget where I put some of these bassline sounds, so that, here we go. just gonna lay down a bass line. There's a bit of a latency going on here today, so you might have to bear with me. So I've done this in an octave up, and the reason I did this is because it's easier for me to hear the. Yeah, this is doing some weird things with the quantize because of the latency. So I am going to just open up the editor. No, that's not it. Where are we? Yeah. Okay. So for whatever reason, this definitely got weird. One good thing about the step editor is you can just start moving things around a little bit. So. Yeah, like I said, I apologize because there's a latency on this. Like I said, trying to run Ableton and everything else at the same time. Sorry, with OBS. This is asking me to walk and shoot down. Now, why do I work so slowly in terms of making sure I've got this right? Well, I tell you what, this is probably just a lot easier to do this. There we are. Oh, you do. To make life easier. Oops. So basically what I've done is just I've got a pattern in with the bass line. It's not exactly what I want, but now I'll start cycling through different sounds. I'm just gonna put up the sub boom bass again. So now I'm just gonna start cycling through sounds. So what I'm doing now is I'm just working on the
We've been down this road
different filters, the different amp filters and the LFOs. This is doing something a little strange today. So try this one more time. Let me see. That note sounds off to me. So I've got a basic sound that I really like as the main bass line. Now I'm going to layer with another sound that might give me a bit more of a space on that bass line. So I'm actually going to pull up, let me see about my Juno 106. There's my little Juno 106. Now this is the modular version of it. I actually have a proper real Juno 106. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. Well, actually, before I do that, one thing I will do, and I do advise everyone to do this, is name the actual sound. So I just do sub, boom, bass, 3BS P1 space 3-1 bass, click 99. I know it's a long one, but what that is with something like the sub boom bass, because it has so many patches and so many synths, I try to give myself the label of where I can come back and find it, because sometimes what will happen is I'll go back to session and it might change. If I pull this up, let's say in a different laptop or a different computer, I'll just take the session and I'll be able to pull up the sub boom bass, and let's say I might not have the actual synth plugged in or the actual patch plugged in. I'll know exactly where to go find it, and if anything changes at any point in time, I know where to go back to the original sound that I was using first. So what I want to do now is layer that bass line with something from Juno 106. So I'm going to copy that and just solo this. And let's see. So what's happening right now, guys, is I am overtaxing my system because I'm running Logic, Ableton, and OBS. And some synths are just a little bit too data hogs, I'll call them. Let me see if I could find a different one that maybe isn't as data hog as that. I gotta get. Okay, this one isn't as bad. Okay. So I have this one, which is retro synth. I just want to see about a sound to layer over the other one. Put some reverbs on this. There we go. That's when it starts acting up again. One thing I will say is the way I'm gonna have to operate a little more streamlined today in order to make it run with OBS and everything at the same time. Just to give you an idea, okay, so let me do some things here. I don't know why some of these things got a little messed up there. Okay. I see what happened here. So I copied something a little bit earlier. It looks like I didn't set it up exactly properly. Yeah, everything is right there. This is where it started getting funky. Okay. This is why I do like copying them rather than just auto copying them. I want to go in and change something later. Everybody has a different workflow. Some things that'll go faster for some other people. This is just kind of the way I've always done it. This is a little bit of an old school way to make to arrange it, but later on I can go in and just kind of chop my arrangement up a little bit differently. So let me just go here, save. So just as an idea, let me set up that. OBS crash.
Oh, no, it didn't.
No, it didn't. It's right there.
Why did it just go away?
I might have hit something.
It looked like it crashed because it went instant.
Yeah. I'll just do a little quick drop. Let me just Apple just to check it out. Apple M to mute. So just kind of getting like an Afro vibe today with this track. Let's see. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm kind of getting Afro vibe. Now I want to put like some chords over it or a synth. Let's see what I have. that I can pull up that I like for this. Let's see. It still kept going over there before, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, my fave synths. I am going to pull up. I'm just trying to see something that I can pull up that won't be so heavy on this. Let me try the Olga. This is an old school kind of really dirty synth. So.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past it. We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past it.
All right, so I like that build of that one. Let me show you what the synth looks like. This is the Olga. It's one of my fave old dirty sounding. Everything's in Russian. I couldn't even tell you what the name of this patch is because it's all in Russian. So for all the Russians out there, if you know what this is, maybe you can tell me. So.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past
All right, let's just get those. Let's quantize all this. Do the 16th. 16th. No, that should just lock it in straight. Yeah.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past
Right. So I'm going to save that one for a little bit later in the track. So when I'm starting off the build up, this is now me starting to do the arrangement a little bit as I go. I had the vocals laid out in a certain way, so I kind of cut a little bit of time off with these reverse vocals and these the way I laid out the vocals. The main kind of chorus section comes a little bit later, so I'm actually going to change some of the way that I did the structure, the dropout, and then just copy that here. So if I started off just as a sample here.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past it. I don't wanna close the door, but I got a feeling I might have to, 'cause we ain't living like we used to now. You know I love you more than my life, but you know that something ain't right. Please don't let me down.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a groove there. I really like that. Somebody was asking me, what computer am I using? I'm using a Macintosh laptop, MacBook Pro. I got this one 2019, I believe. I think this is 2019. Just trying to remember actually whether 2018 or 2019. 2019 MacBook Pro, fully blown out. I'm using a terabyte SSD drive inside, so that actually means that I don't have any moving drives inside, so the access to the information is a lot faster. The way I've laid out my computer, because this I use for my Logic, obviously Ableton. This is my workhorse computer. What I found out that it wasn't the best for was actually live streaming, and that's why I got a Sega PC for my actual live streaming computer. But the Mac is a beast to handle any graphics cards, sound cards, anything with music and creative visual. I have my synths and my core main samples actually on the internal hard drive of the computer, but I keep all of my sample libraries on external hard drives, which I back up and copy. And the reason I do that is I've got 2 4 terabyte hard drives that are pretty small. They're like this big, but one of them holds my music library. I have a backup. By the way, I've got about 3 backups of any drive that I have with samples or sounds. So all of my DJ music, you'll see. Well, you actually can't see my desktop fully. I have a one dedicated drive just for my tracks and samples and so on and so forth. And I've got one dedicated drive that's just my DJing music collection, all the stuff I put my iTunes and everything on, and I keep them separate so that if I don't need my sample library, then I don't have it plugged in if I'm not working on that. Like, let's say I'm just working on organizing my sets, I won't really be working with the sample libraries. But right now, since I'm working on a production, I'll have all of my sample sounds on the external, but the core things that I use, like all of my main synthesizers and the libraries that go with those, I have got Philharmonic for my live strings, which I might, the only thing is I don't know if I pull it up right now, I may slow down everything. Let me see which is the processor that this has. This Mac, I'm actually running it, by the way, on Mojave, mainly because of the stability of Mojave with all of the DAWs that I have. I got the Radeon. Let me see. This is a Radeon Pro graphic card. It's Intel, 16 gigs of internal memory, 3.1 Intel Core i7 processor. So it's pretty powerful. There are more powerful ones that are coming out. And a desktop, it's interesting because I see a lot of people with desktops, and I used to always work in my main computer with a desktop until I found myself traveling so much, so that my laptop is now my desktop. And that's pretty much what I'm using for all of my productions, as it's kind of just plug and play. Wherever I go, I can walk into any studio, and even if they only have just like a mixing board and some speakers, or even a friend's house, I can just plug in my gear and then start whatever I need to do right there. And it's great for collaborating with other producers because I just come basically with my whole studio. Let me see, I got some questions. Where am I doing my live streams? I'm actually doing my live streams at my studio. I have a live stream area where I've got my 4 CDJ 3000s with the VS10 mixer, green screen behind me, and then I just did a vinyl only live stream where I brought out my old Technics 1200s that I had modified so that they spin backwards, and I did a 4-hour vinyl set on that. So I'm going to do another one very, very soon. And by the way, guys, if you want to catch me live for my live streams, you can check out my Patreon page. There's Roger Sanchez at Patreon, and sign up for a subscription. And I'm also going to be doing more of these production tutorials, DJ tutorials, like I did last week right here on Beatport. And you'll be able to check out all of my previous live streams and a bunch of other stuff, and discounts on all of my gear, so on and so forth. Let me see. Okay, so Lacuna Sunrise. Why am I using two DAWs? Well, when I started the session today, basically what I was explaining was the reason I use 2 is each one of these, Logic and Ableton, have different features that appeal to me. With Ableton, I'm able to drop in loops very, very quickly. It locks it into time. And I can chop, flip, and reverse things a lot quicker on Ableton, and then also really arrange stuff. So right now, for instance, before, one thing I noticed is during this drop, I wanted to come out with a crash or an effect on 81. So like, I'll go over here to 81, And I'm going to go to my, let me see where I've got my drums, my kit. Where are my one shots? Okay, my one shots. Put on my glasses again. Gotta wear my glasses to see things clearly on the screen these days. Drums, you see my crash. Let me use the other one, hang on. These one shots. Drums. Okay, so I like this one. I'm gonna drag this one on this channel. So one of the reasons I like having this DAW is I can quickly audition the sounds here, or I can even use the Ableton push to scroll through the sounds that I want to listen to. It's a little bit longer on Logic to locate these sounds. Like if I want to go in and just check out sounds here on like Apple loops and so on and so forth, I've got to go in here and audition them. It's a little bit longer and more drawn out, but it's a lot faster here just because of the way it works. All right, so let's see. But here's what's good. I'm looking at the arrangement over here in who we got here? Who's still clicking? Okay, I'm looking at the arrangement over here. So at 73, I know I want to drop one more drop, and then I could shorten that crash. And I can also quickly do a reverse cymbal crash. Later on, I'll put a delay on that so it just goes. What's too loud? Oh.
I didn't. He says something fast was too loud. I can't. He didn't say what.
Let's see. Sorry about that. All good? Okay, cool. So having these two DAWs allows me to really jump back and forth and pick the best thing out of it. So here I am. I like this over here in terms of being able to drop in these effects. Let's see, I'm dropping in.
Before you go into samples, bring Ableton up in here. Bring this guy down.
Okay,
So
so
like, is that-
this guy,
No,
right?
the one next to it.
This guy.
That's the preview volume of what they hear. So
Ah,
it's-
okay, so you guys are hearing that too loud. So bring it down to what?
Yeah, that should be fine. Enough. That's the monitor of the sample.
Got it. That's what. Yeah. In running, guys, my setup through through OBS, I'm still learning how to work in this flow at the same time. Let you guys check it out. So this is my first time doing an actual screen shared live stream production through OBS. So excuse the little tweaks that we're doing in the middle of this, and also trying to get you guys to see the best. Because I thought we were going to be able to see all the plugins, but that's, I've got to keep going back and forth. So as I was saying, as I'm looking at the vocals here, I know this one comes in, the first vocal comes in at 57. So one thing I like about Ableton is it's really quick to just drag things and drop them. So here I am, dropping that in.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this. I don't wanna close the door, but I got a feeling I might have to.
So I'm gonna try and
'Cause we ain't living like we used to now.
Hold on one second. So I just saw something I liked. I'll just write. And this is why I really do like using Ableton along with Logic. Okay. Ooh. I'm going to drop the volume down so So, as you can see, I'm just starting to quickly build on these elements and adding them layer by layer, but switching back and forth to these. Once I have extra sounds that I want from Ableton, then I'll literally bounce that stem that I've recorded in Ableton back into Logic. But right now, I'm gonna leave Ableton open so that I can add a little bit more of the drums that I might want to drop in later on. I'm gonna see if I can add one more synth. I kind of hear an arpeggiated synth over this. So let me see what I have that won't that won't completely make this sound, you know, slow this all down. Let me see if the Anna will do it. Let's see. No, not the Anna. So, like I said, some of the things that I do is just literally going through sounds. My favorite thing to hate. Sequences, where are we? So, let me just loop this. Ooh, that has an interesting chord progression on top, which would. One note that I think I brought in a little too early. Let's go to wrong one. That's the better review.
We've been down this road before.
what I'm doing is adding this little high note over it. So I'll add that and save that. Let's see. As I'm working out the structure. Question is, do I think that having hardware synths is necessary to reach good sounds nowadays and virtual synths can be enough? Well, I think it all depends on how you use a synth. I love old analog synths, but it just turned out that my travels made it difficult for me to have them with me all the time. Now, that being said, when I'm in a studio and I have actual synths, I get a different sound. So for me, it's more of switching up my workflow to come up with a different result. First time I went to go visit deadmau5 in Toronto years ago, when he was first blowing up, I went to his place and all he had were these walls of patched in 707 303s. It was unreal. And that's one guy that I could tell you is a genius when it comes to his workflow, his production technique, and the ability that he has to really get amazing sounds out of his synths. What I find is that virtual synths now can replicate quite a lot of what analog synths are, but there's something to be said about working in a very hands-on way that changes your workflow in terms of what the outcome's going to be. So if you're running, like if I'm dropping in these, I'm basically doing step edits and chopping up loops and so on and so forth, I'll get a certain sound in terms of my drum arrangement. But if I'm using a step editor on an SP1200, or even as I'm getting ready to really dive into push, I'll program certain beats and certain rhythms that just come natural to me from hand drumming. And that may not be necessarily what I would have come up with had I dropped it all in on a loop or done a step edit inside the computer. So it's a little bit more for me about getting a different result, and also the accidental, the happy accidents you find when you put something in live and it does something you weren't expecting, or you accidentally cross patch something and all of a sudden it has this weird sound and you're like, oh wait, that's really, really cool. So it really depends on how you use the medium. Let me see here. Now, I'm just working on a little bit in the arrangement here. So I want to fade in that sound. It's very basic right now, but I'm about to do something to flip it in a second. But I just want to kind of get this. So now I like this sound, but let me see if I could do something with it that's a little bit different. And I'm going to see if this one, by the way, let me just save, collect all and save. Do this always periodically during your sessions so that the dreaded crash doesn't happen. Oh, was it the other headphone? Was it that was doing it? Okay.
That was pulling that out.
That's
So
what it
I
was.
took that,
Okay,
so we're trying to-
got it. All right. So now, one thing I do like to do is audio damage. Let's see, where are you? Replicant. So here's something that I really like using. This does these really weird randomized. And I'm just playing with these randomized. So what I'll do with this is I'll run this. Copy. Let me just run it real quickly. So I'm going to solo this from here to here. And I'm just going to bounce this offline. Let me just call this random wood block. So I'm going to bounce this randomized synth as, you know, random wood block. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in a different audio channel. I like this sound for certain parts, but then if I want to flip to something that's going to sound really cool but be consistent, because these are random, they'll just keep doing whatever it is they're going to do, and they'll always be a bit different. I'm going to take that and then let me take this out of here so that when I run it, let me just go to Apple 8 and our regions, audio file, add region, add audio file, and add this here, done. There we go. I'm going to drop this in here. So now, just as a test, I can EQ it better later on. So
Feeling I might have to,
buy this.
'cause we ain't living like we used to now.
So I can use that as a cool way to flip that sound, and I'll EQ it so that it'll come together properly. And then later on, I'll bounce them all on one channel. Let me just do this. Apple Z. Which one? I'm gonna mute that. So let's say oops, Apple Z. I'm going to just copy this there and then drop this in as a break so that when you hear it, it's
Please don't let me down. Please don't let me down.
Just pop that question up one more time, please, because I was kind of in the middle of this mode, and I think it's an important question to look at. Let me save this. Save that. Let's see. Okay, with all the digital studios at knockdown price, aren't we going toward mass production of similar pieces and seeing poor construction? Well, here's an interesting thing about that. I think that, yeah, that's it. And seeing poor construction. I always look at all of the equipment that I have and anything as a tool. And I could tell you what really made me realize this is when Daft Punk first came out, I met Thomas and Guimon. I met Thomas first, actually. I was on a trip to Paris, and friends of mine from, I believe it was Soma, the label in Glasgow, had told me, hey, there's these kids that are coming up. I really think you should talk to them. You might want to sign them to your label. I've released some of this stuff. And this is right before they signed to Virgin, so I met Thomas Bangalter. Subsequently afterwards, they came out with the album Homework. And one of the most interesting things for me was when they asked me and DJ Sneak and a couple of other guys who were their heroes to tour with them. I saw what their setup was, that they created this album that basically blew just everything out of the water, changed the whole vibe. And this is before they were wearing the robot suits. And they had very basic setups with what was the name of? He had this little MIDI EQ, not MIDI. Oh God, I forgot what the name of it was. This really small analog mixer that he did everything on with I think he was using the S950 samplers and a couple of other really basic tools. And what I realized that all of this they're all tools. So you could have the most amazing studio setup, the most amazing racks, the top line of everything. If you can't be creative with it, your sound is always going to be poor because you don't have the connection to your tools. And it's one of the things that starting out, I was literally buying one piece of equipment at a time. I had the SP1200, I had Lindrums, I had the Atari 1040 ST computer when I first started. We're talking like ancient, Fred Flintstone shit. The thing was, I learned each of these pieces and I learned to squeeze the most out of them. And that's where my creativity came in terms of what I was able to get out. So I don't necessarily think that all studios will, if they have the same components, are going to turn out the same thing. It all depends on who's actually behind it. Now, what happens is you have a lot of people emulating other people's sound because they think this is successful. So if I come out with something similar to it, I'm going to be successful. And there is such a thing as a formula for works in terms of approaching, pop music or different styles of music. There are certain frequencies and synths and sounds and whatever that have a tendency to connect. But you could be ultra adventurous in a high-end room, just like you can be ultra adventurous in a very basic setup as well. Let's see. It's really important that we all take time to learn our craft and sit down and have time to play with the equipment. Like I said, I just got the Push, and the reason I got it was my girl Kristen, who's also producing her own album, producing it, writing it. We're co-producing some tracks for her project, just like I'm working on my artist album right now. She had worked with the Push before, and I talked to my boy Mike, and he had a Push. He loaned it to me for a couple of days. I didn't get a chance to really get deep into it, but what I saw that I liked was it reminded me of working on the SP1200, and I used to just sit there and get really deep into different pages and filters and so on and so forth to get a sound out of it. So I'm going to be now working with this to get a production flow. So it'll be more me banging out beats again and coming up with different patterns and coming up with interesting chords that, there's, because I'm able to trigger chord pads from here as well. It's a controller, just like anything else. So it's just about switching up the workflow so that I can come up with different ideas. And that's really what it's about. Just expressing whatever ideas you can. So right now, I had no idea which direction I was going to go in with this track as I started it today, but it's kind of feeling this kind of deeper Afro vibe, which I'm really kind of feeling for this track right now. And I'm going to wind up developing it to a much more full production after we finish this session. But this is just the flow that I'm going with while I'm talking to you guys. So it's interesting for me as well to work and talk at the same time that I'm trying to, come up with something and seeing how it layers out. But again, as I was just saying, what I did just about a second ago was take this one sound that I found and then process it to come up with this variant. So. So, and again, going back to the using two DAWs, let me just turn this down, volume down here. Using two DAWs as I'm organizing the arrangement for this. So I need another crash in like 105. I'll put one there, and then I might put the reverse. So I dropped out the bass line so far. Let me just put it back in. So I kind of want to do a little bit of a breakdown vibe here. And let me see. If I was starting out, the question from Ian, if I was starting out now, what software would I use? And is there any first piece of hardware that I think is essential? If I were starting off now, the difference is when I first started out, it was more about working with individual samplers and synths and drum machines. So I remember borrowing a friend of mine's 909, a TR-707, and the 303 acid bassline module. And then I went out and fell in love. Then I saw a friend of mine with the SP1200 and I fell in love with that. So I went out and bought the SP1200. Now, I think there's so much versatility in the computer. My first gear would actually be a laptop. And I would download certain core synths and make sure I had certain effect plugins, certain synth plugins that are, bass modulators, synth modules. Like I said, the Subboom Bass is my favorite bassline plugin recently. But there are others. I have so many that I've been kind of just getting. I get given some and and every so often I'll check out a new one. But the ones that I've been working with that give me the result the quickest are some of these. So for me, the computer would be the first place to start. But in about a couple of weeks, I'll let you know if I would also recommend you get the Ableton Push as well, because that might be actually the controller to help for hip hop, house, and more dance oriented music productions. I mean, if you're gonna start making rock music, you might want to have different things. You definitely want to have a really good microphone. Actually, the one I'm using right now is a Rode mic, which is the NT1 that I use for my radio shows. It's a solid all around condenser mic. I also have Neumann, I have a U87. And I'm going to probably get a couple of Browners. Those are amazing high-end microphones, but a nice basic microphone. But really, you get a laptop and you download some, the DAW that you can fall in love with, and that could be Ableton, that could be Logic, it could be both. And start with that. From there, because that'll give you the widest variety of availability of different types of synths and modules that will allow you to come up with full productions just in one box. And then you could begin to add on to stuff after that. That's how I kind of would start it nowadays. Let's see. Oh yes, it's funny. I just saw somebody put up FL Studio years ago. I was hanging out with Laid Back Luke was staying at my house in Ibiza, and it was very, very early on. And I remember seeing him pull out his laptop and start working on some productions, and I hadn't really seen a DAW, and he was like, "What's this?" Like, it's Fruity Loops, which turned into FL Studio. And the interesting thing is, like, when I heard him say Fruity Loops, I'm like, isn't that kind of like a beginner, just like you're messing around program just to kind of, I guess pretend to produce something? And that was my initial kind of thought. And he was like, well, actually, the thing of it is it's an easy way to begin to organize your thoughts. And I just got so into the program that I've now been able to make full productions out of it. And then I saw how he was working with it, and it just made me realize it doesn't really matter what the DAW is. It doesn't matter what the tool is. It's how you use a tool and what you get comfortable with. I started out playing on turntables with vinyl. And CDs came along, I started with that, and then obviously moved to USB. Some people went the more Serato route. I went straight to CDJs and then kind of stayed there in terms of what I'm playing with. But what I'm able to do with it is get into the technology to squeeze the most out of it. So that's kind of like the way I approach it all. Just literally get in there and see what you can pull out of it. But whatever you want to take the time with, and that's the thing, whatever feels more comfortable. Let's see. Asking how I was born, Another Chance. All right, so somebody's asking me how I did the song Another Chance, or how it was born. And the actual, what happened was I was working on my artist album. I was signed to Sony in the UK at that point in time. And then the dance division from Sony started changing out of what they were doing. Simon Dunmore from, at that point in time, yes, he had just started Defected. He was with Cool Temple before that. Said, you know what? Let me step in and I'll take over the A&R and I'll bring the album through. I was in Montreal, and every time I would go to different countries, I would always go record shopping. Tell me where the vinyl shop is, and I'd go hunting. And I found the vinyl of the album from Toto. And it was the album that they had at their big hit, Africa. And on that when I got the stack of wax, I brought it back from Montreal back to New York, and then I was going through records and just kind of sample hunting, and I found this really emotional vocal, which is the beginning of "I Won't Let You Down," and that if I had another chance tonight, just kind of spoke to me. So I sampled that, I chopped it up, I played chords over it. And honestly, the funniest thing was, I think it was one of the last 2 tracks I did on the album. And my goal was, I want to put something a little more underground on the album. Let me just kind of do this chopped sample track. And it became Another Chance. And that was the reason that I think it resonated so much, is because it just speaks emotionally to people. You know, it's like one of the things about the music that I make is I want to touch people's emotions every time I'm making something. So that's kind of how that one went. All right, let's see. Let's see what else, where we're at right here, right now. Let me take it from here. Just listen to this through for a second.
We've been down this road before. I thought that we were past this. I don't wanna close the door, but I got a feeling I might have to, 'cause we ain't living like we used to now. You know I love you more than my life, but you know I know that something ain't right. Please don't let me down. You know I love you more than my life, but you know I know that something ain't right. Please don't let me down. Please don't let me down.
Actually, what I would do there is I would probably drop all the beats, since I'm dropping out the bass line.
Please don't let me down.
Go.
Please don't let me down. Giving you up too long. Have I been holding on? Giving you up.
So at this point, I'm just kind of getting the arrangement set in my head. I've got the basic vibe here. I want to add some pads or something to kind of really make it warmer. I'm going to see if I could bring up the Omnisphere, although I'm a little bit concerned that may tax the system a bit much working in this one with OBS. Give me some weird. No, not updates. Sorry, I didn't want that. Boo. Here we go. Why am I not hearing it? Is my You know what, I think I should be in there. All right, let me try something else. Omnisphere is not giving me the sounds today for some reason, and I've got to figure out why. All right. I'm going to try using the Miroslav, the Philharmonic. These are for my violins. I'm just kind of hearing something very cinematic and operatic behind this track. Let's see. So in terms of bass synthesis, you know, one of the things that I tend to use is I find plugins that I really like in the sub-boom bass, and then I will, let me see, let me try to see if this makes a little more sense using this. So I like using waves, if this will, see how it'll act up today. It's starting to get a little slow the more I'm adding to it right now because I'm running all of this. Hey, come back here. The JJP, sorry guys, it's starting to act a little funky trying to do. Probably because I was trying to load the Miroslav at the same time. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I have a feeling I might be. Let me see. All right. So I like using. This is more bass processing, right? That's not bass synthesis. Let me pull up the sub-boom bass. What I like about the sub-boom bass, and I don't know why, let me see. See, I'm hearing an off note in that. I'll fix that later. Whatever reason is starting to act, it's like a little weird. But I tend to work within these filters, changing the attack and the cutoff to get a different sound. Now, for some reason, I don't know whether it's because I'm working in this mode through OBS, it's not allowing me to change some of the processes on that. So I'm going to see if I can find another synth that will let me let's see. Oh, this got solo, that's why. Yeah, I'm starting to push the computer a little bit when it comes to how much processing I'm doing, and it looks like the Miroslav is just taking it. The Philharmonic is a very heavy synth. Let me pull that one out instead of that. Let me try to find for the Super Jupiter, the Jupiter 8 rather. Let me see if I put this one. No, that's still too heavy. The reason I'm getting all these glitchy clicks is because some of these are taxing the processing power, CPU, at the same time that I'm streaming. So it's that's one thing I will say about the Mac, is that it's not the most CPU friendly when you're running a Logic or Ableton and trying to use these really heavily CPU heavy synths and start to try to run that through OBS. So I'm kind of running into a couple of little limitations here in terms of what I'm able to use without getting that static glitch. So let me see. I could pull up something on the preset. Yeah. When you start hearing that clipping, it's because it's not liking. So what I'll tend to do is I'll use something like sub-boom bass. I will go into the filters and start changing the cutoff to just get that warmer round, to get a rounder sound, and opening up the releases, just get the much longer tails. And then I'll run it through. And let me see if it'll let me do this right now. Through Waves. Then I'll run it through the JJP. So let's see. So JJP bass, if it ever comes back, come back here. Sorry, this is just, as you guys can see, I've got quite a lot of stuff here. I answered earlier why I have two DAWs up, and it's for workflow. As I said, Ableton is something that I like to use more for beat organization and loops to kind of get things tightened really, really quickly and run in the background, where I like using Logic as my main DAW to program synths and so on and so forth. So the 5 things to never forget when you're in a studio, according to me. All right. 5 things you should never forget when you're in a studio. Number 1, save, save, save. I've had some nightmares where I hadn't saved my session as I went along. And ever since then, I've gotten into the habit of just periodically Apple S and saving everything on whatever program I'm working with. Number 2 is take time to make shortcuts for yourself so you could find your synths and your sounds. I always like to take what I call a research day, where I just sit there and favorite sounds and find out which are my favorite new samples, you know, which is a favorite sound, favorite processor, and organize them accordingly. Number 3, if you're working in headphones, make sure you do not really, really blast. And same thing with speakers, really, really blast and fatigue your ears, because you won't be able to work for too long if you're just completely blasting it. And I have tinnitus, by the way, from DJing. So I always try to make sure I'm conscientious with my ears. Organization is number 4. I like to have an organized work environment so that I can find my samplers, my drives. Organization is key so that you keep your files all together. As I was saying in the beginning, I save my Logic and my Ableton files for one project under one folder, and I collect all and save all the samples and sounds that I use, so I can collect everything and have it all in one place. And number 5, which is kind of like a little bit of number 3, is redundancy. Back everything up to multiple drives. They fail after a period of time. So probably every few years, whenever you get a new drive, especially when your computers upgrade, back everything up. More checkpoints. Can you give us more checkpoints when in the studio? I'm trying to think of what checkpoints you mean in terms of what are more studio etiquette, or what do you mean by checkpoints? You mean in terms of things that I do when I'm in the studio? One thing I've discovered in terms of, okay, let's see what that is. Okay, sorry, Vibrator. What are your thoughts about mastering your own work versus sending it to somebody and paying for it? I feel sometimes mastering stuff is difficult. I can tell you for myself, because I'm traveling so much and I'm not always working in a consistent room. I found it very difficult to consistently get really good masters if I mix them myself, especially when I'm on the road. So I got in the habit of creating a rough to give an idea of where I want it to go, and then sending it to my engineers to mix and master. The main reason is they have a stable room environment that's consistent, so that whenever I listen back, when they send me masters, I know what I'm getting, and it's consistent. Okay, the checkpoints, things to do when in the studio. One of the things to do is always be on time if you've booked a session, and especially if you're paying for it. If you've got other people that are you're going to be riding with, I find one of the most inconsiderate things that a lot of people tend to do, a lot of producers, a lot of artists, is they just don't have a time clock. So one of the people that I respect the most in terms of work etiquette and ethic is Eminem. Eminem goes to the studio from like, I think 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 p.m. He takes lunch for 1 hour, and he literally will work it like a 9 to 5 day. He treats it like a job, and at 5 o'clock, he's done, he's gone home. Now, not everybody has that schedule in that time frame, but what is important is if you set a time to start at that time. Some people are open-ended workers, which means they work until they're done. I find that if you set a schedule to work, especially if you have another job that you're doing that's 9 to 5 or paying the bills, and your music tends to be your passion and side hustle, set aside a schedule, kind of like going to the gym, that you dedicate that work time to. So setting a schedule for yourself, very, very important. Being conscientious of other people when you're working with them, so you can show up on time and not keep people waiting, builds up a very good reputation for yourself and a good work ethic. And I find that the more you take this passion seriously, the more it'll give back to you. One of the other things that I find that it's important to do is to allow yourself the ability to get to a certain place if you don't hear anything, stop, chill, take a break, take an ear break, give yourself the ability to, I'm pulling up something right now. By the way, this is, I'm digressing for a second. This is a plugin I love to use on bass lines. It just makes it fat and comes up with different imaging of it. So making sure that you're consistent with your time, very, very important. Making sure that when you are showing up, if you're working with other people, you build up a good reputation for yourself, but you build up the habits to do that. Being able to say, okay, you reach a certain point where you don't hear anything, stop, put it down, save it, come back to it the next day. Some tracks will get done in a couple of hours, and some tracks may take some time. I've just learned that each track kind of has its own pace that it writes itself. And rather than being frustrated with myself, I give myself time to be able to have fun with it. I want to say, what's this? Sounds like your workflow is extensive. Can you do it all in Ableton so it won't tax your CPU? Well, right now, the reason I'm having these CPU issues isn't so much running Ableton and Logic. It's more like running Ableton, Logic, and OBS out of the same computer. So the OBS, the longer that I'm streaming, the more CPU it eats up. I was having this problem when I was trying to live stream from my Mac and try to run visuals, and the Mac just, it doesn't work that way. So it's a little bit more limited, at least the one that I have, when it comes to doing all these things together. But I found ways. By the way, if you find, here is something that I've done when I'm starting to tax my CPU, but I still want to keep going with the flow, still flowing. I'll either, you see this button right here when you set it up? That is, it's a freeze button. So what it does is it freezes the track, which means that, let's say I'm happy with this sound as it is right now, but I want to come back later on and maybe process it or whatever have you, but it's hogging up all the CPU power. So I know that I'm going to keep using that sound. I'm going to arrange it. I'll work on the arrangement a little bit later, but just very, very quickly, just to give you guys an idea. I will take the most intensive CPU hogs and I will freeze them. So what I'll do is I'm going to take the length of this track right now. Let's put a loop on it. And then I will hit freeze. I'll hit the space bar. What that does is you're going to hear the sounds and it's not going to actively be using the CPU of those synths. It basically takes a snapshot of it, so you won't be able to change anything on the actual arrangement or the track itself while it's frozen. But what it can do is free up CPU so that you can have another sound. And then once you find another sound, you do what you want with it. You put an arrangement. I tend to take the newer sounds, bounce them into audio, and then go back out and mute the synth so that I'm not using the CPU. Okay, so what are some of the production lessons I learned from back in the early 90s that are still important to my workflow now? I think what I was saying earlier in terms of being on time and being able to step away from something once I've reached a certain point where I don't hear anything are some things that I use right now. In terms of workflow from the 90s, I was using samplers and drum machines, and then I got into using, first it was SymphTracks Gold, then it was Performer, and then I started using Logic. And once I started with Logic, I kind of stuck on the Logic train. But throughout the 90s, it was using an SP1200, S950 sampler, and I would basically slave everything to the SP1200. Now, the thing that I love that I still use today is the mentality of how to kind of layer beats. And but I'm using different technology for it. So as you saw just about a second ago, I froze those channels. So now you'll be able to hear them, right? So it's using the sound, but it's not using the CPU. So let me see if I can pull up something else now. Let me find a section. I'm gonna see if I can pull up another instrument. Let me see the Diva. Yeah, I like this synth. I'll pull it up so you can see what it is. It's called the Diva. Man, why is it not pulling it up here? Is it here? There we go. This is called the Diva. This has some really cool analog sounds. You can see it right there. Let me see. It started to tax it as well. This one definitely uses a lot of CPU. It's got a chord already built into it. Let me see if I can use a synth that maybe that isn't as heavy. Because that's the thing, I want to find something warm. Like I know the Juno 106. Let me see if I can find the pads. There's a Juno 106 pad that I love. Nope. Still using too much CPU. Yeah, it's while I'm live streaming, I'm not able to use all of the stuff that I want to, mainly because it's still it's using a lot of CPU on the okay. I'm gonna pull up. This is another synth that I really like to use. It's called the Circle. And let me pull it up to see if you can see it. This is the Circle. This really has a lot of old school. This is a Robert Hood sound. Not necessarily right for this track, but could be cool for something else. This one's interesting because it doesn't have, because it's a sample, I'm kind of having to play around to find where the keys are actually going as opposed to them being where they would normally be. Let me see. Let's see, what is it, Roman Groove? Roman Groove's asking about vocals. Do I come up with lyrics in the melody beforehand, or does the singer just jam out with you? You know, every single session I do goes differently. There are some times when I'll sit down and jam with a singer, and then, you know, we'll write out melodies, we'll write out the vibes. When it comes to songwriting, I tend to like to write a story. Now, sometimes I may have a hook or a melody in mind, so I might hum it. But a lot of times if I'm writing, I'll want to write a story out. What are we talking about? What am I trying to say? What is this story? Where is this going to? And then kind of I find the lyrics that way. Sometimes they send me a song already written and then I work with it. And sometimes I may deconstruct that. All right, so what's my best tips for sound placement to give space to the different instruments? Well, as you can see that I'm doing right now, I'm kind of adding a lot of layers to the sounds that I'm working with right now. So sometimes it may sound a little bit dense at one point in time. I like to literally add all the flavors in and then start pulling things out of the mix, so that I find sometimes that some elements might not work together, but if you pull some elements out, then I'll arrange it so that some elements will come in at certain points, while, let's say, it's the drums or something may not be there. I find if you have the vocals, the bass, and the drums as the main component, and then kind of frame everything else around it for dance-oriented tracks, that's how I start working out where I want to put things spatially. I also love panning percussions to different sides. So there's, you know, I always like to have the kick straight up the center, just to kind of give it the kind of anchor for the track. But then I might put some hats on the left or the right, percussions in different pan positions. And what that does is it starts to give this three-dimensionality to sound. I also, which I'm about to do in about a second, I want to lay this little pad, this little arpeggiated sound in really quickly, and then I'm gonna pull up this plugin that I like using that gives a three-dimensionality to the sound, gives it a bit wider. So. So let me just quantize that. All right, so I'm going to change something in that because I think I should have just kept it where it was. The notes. That's what it was. That was a mistake. All right, so with this, actually, yes. So there's a plugin I like using, which is the Isotope. Where are we? Imager. So you can see the difference. And now you can't see that, so hold on, let me show you. This is the Isotope. And this Isotope Imager allows me to get a much wider transparent sonic image. So here's without it, here's with it. So in the mix now. Yeah, and that just gives it a much wider image, and I love using that for pads. You can use it for background vocals just to give it a much wider dynamic range sonically, and that also speaks to finding space in the tracks. So you asked me something before. Gaming Sleepy hey Sleepy and Boo, have you ever tried making music for a totally different genre like hard techno, drum and bass? Hey Sleepy and Boo, what's going on? I actually, interestingly enough, definitely am into different genres of of music with the project that I'm working on with my girl Chris, and we're doing kind of alternative R&B with some rock influences in it. I've done some drum and bass. I did actually a drum and bass version remix for the Police, Walking on the Moon, many years ago. Heavily influenced on the vibe from like LTJ Bookham, Ronnie Size. So that's kind of like my headspace, and I do love drum and bass. And hip hop. I'm old school hip hop. Like a lot of my beats definitely come from that. I've done some work with Latin artists, so I've done some Latin oriented productions. Working with live musicians is definitely another level. Work, I can program anything, but then learning how to arrange productions with live musicians is definitely something that, for a Latin artist, is something that's really interesting that I've worked on. So definitely open to different genres, and I like to learn different rhythms and bring that into house music. You know, getting a whole different vibe and adding that to everything. So guys, I think I'm gonna leave it here in terms of where I'm at with the production. I hope you guys have been enjoying the session with me today. Thanks to Beatport for making this happen. I'm gonna definitely be doing more production tutorials, and also I'm thinking about starting one-on-one production classes. And you can find me on my Patreon page, where you can sign up for different tiers of memberships, and I'm going to be focusing in on my members with that. Definitely also catch the next live stream on Patreon. And I hope to definitely be back doing more stuff with Beatport. I had a great time with you guys today. I have time for one more question. Is there any other question? I'll leave the floor open for the Beatport fam. Hit me with one more question before I go. And then I'm going to keep this and then develop this further down the road. And I'll probably let you guys hear it as kind of like a preview sneak peek. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to have to do like a Beatport exclusive R&I with this one, especially because we were working on this today. What do you think? Thanks everybody. All right, one more question. Last question. Let's see. All right. Well, everybody, thank you. That's it for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you all very, very soon. Peace.